Alright, well I've got something kind of neat for you guys today, for you electric universe theory fans. I've got some information from symbolism from 500 years ago, and also backed up by the Bible, believe it or not, that shows that some things that support the electric universe theory. The person that I'm showing you here is Athanasius. He was a Jesuit priest between 1602 and 1680 is when he was living. And he was one of the first guys I was turned on to. I was turned on to his work and his alchemical art that he's done because he was showing symbolism within inside his art that matched up to what I had been finding as far as my research goes and my discoveries. We're going to see a little bit of that in a minute. But just to let you know, Athanasius, 17th century German Jesuit scholar and polymath. He published around 40 major works, most notably in the fields of Oriental studies, geology, and medicine. Kircher has been compared to the fellow Jesuit Roger Boscovic and also to Leonardo da Vinci for his enormous range of interests, and has been honored with the title Master of 100 Arts. He was also the father of Egyptology because he was the first one to get in there and start cracking on it. And he is also, there is a book out about him, and it's called Athanasius Kircher, The Last Man Who Knew Everything. Now, if you're familiar with any of his work, he's got like a 1,000-page book out there where he's just gone all over the place. He's got all these intricate diagrams, alchemical art, and so forth. It's called Mundi Subterranei. You can find it on archive.org, and it's a little over 1,000 pages, and it shows the original. But inside that, he's got all kinds of cool alchemical art, which we're going to show. So here's the deal. So I found something that within the art seems to back up something that I had heard recently regarding the electric universe theory. And I'm no physics expert, I'm an analyst, but I know my symbolism. And I know something that these guys with the electric universe probably want to know about. So I've got this right here from the electric sun hypothesis. And I came down here and it says this. The sun may be powered not from within itself, but from outside, the electric Birkeland currents that flow in our arm of the galaxy, as they do in all galaxies. This possibility that the sun may be externally powered by its galactic environment is the most speculative idea in the electric sun hypothesis. It is always attacked by critics, while they completely ignore all the other obvious properties of the electric sun model. In the plasma universe model, cosmic-sized, low-density current create the galaxies and the stars within those galaxies by the electromagnetic Z-pinch effect. It is only a small extrapolation to ask whether these currents remain in place to power those stars. Galactic currents are of low current density, but because the sizes of the stars are large, the total current amperage is high. An electrically powered sun's radiation power would be due to the energy delivered by that amperage. As it travels around the galactic center, the sun may come into regions of higher or lower current density, and so its output may vary both periodically and randomly. Okay, so the bottom line, our sun, it's saying, is powered by an external source, or it is charged by an external source. Forgive me if I don't get the physics completely correct here. My job here is to show you the symbolism and show you the connections, and you guys can take it from there as far as the science goes. Now, as far as the electric universe theory goes, is in the Birkeland currents versus the black holes and all that kind of stuff, I'm not even going to go there as far as that kind of stuff goes, because I believe that there's something that's not necessarily a Birkeland current going on, and not necessarily what has been defined as a black hole. So I'm not even going to go there. There's reasons I believe this, and it would require me to go out and cite things from early astronomers, from their diaries and things like this, which I really don't want to get into right now. I just want to show you the connections with this. So regardless of what we call it, Birkeland currents or not, right here we see when one considers the electric star hypothesis, however, instead of mechanical action, heated gas, the Orion Nebula's radiant emanations are due to a boost in the current that powers the central stars. The electric sheath that is normally invisible receives additional input from the galactic Birkeland currents in which the immersed and gets pushed into the glow discharge state. So if you guys have seen the Orion Nebula before, it looks like what they call a Birkeland current, a trail coming off of the actual M42 and then actually ending at M42. But you can see the spirals. It looks like DNA or something like this. Jacob's ladder or DNA, whatever we want to call that. And it spirals all the way up until we get to the M42, and then of course the hottest region that we see, the brightest region, is inside the trapezium area. And now we get into the mysteries. This is something I would like to see the Thunderbolts project do more of, because they can get a lot of information this way if they would just pay attention to this kind of stuff. So what we can see right here is the focus that when we take a look at this. This is from Athanasius Kircher, one of his drawings. The focus is not on Saturn. Saturn is this little guy right here, okay? And if we take a look at the order of the planets, we have the Earth, Moon, Venus, Mercury, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. Then we have the fixed stars, and then we have Jehovah. And what does it look like it's in right here? It's in a big cloud. Now, how can we back up what this actual cloud is? Well, we have mystical data that we can use that backs that up. As you can see right here in this image, we have what's called Karlskirche High Altar. Karlskirche is a cathedral located in Vienna, Austria. It was created in 1737, and we see the divine name again. We see Jehovah, just like we saw in Athanasius Kircher's drawing, with all the planets in the solar system, and then we have Jehovah, and all these things surrounding it are the clouds, just like we saw. Okay, so this triangle and its shape is important. And what we see is that is what is being depicted. And don't even worry about whether this can be done or not, because if you're a science guy and you haven't looked into the mysteries, these kinds of things pop up all the time. People knew things somehow. And what we see is they depicted in this art piece right here, the Orion Nebula in infrared. And all we have to do is break it down by the bow shock that we see on both sides. On the left side we have this crescent moon cloud right here, and on the right side we see the same thing here, the person with his arm reached out, the little guy kneeling underneath, the same images all the way down to the smallest detail. Okay, so that means that what we've done here is we found the correct label. The correct label, we see that Jehovah is located inside the triangle. That corresponds to the trapezium of the Orion Nebula. Okay, now this can also be backed up, because if we take a look at the symbol for Osiris, this is what we see right here. Now, the Osiris symbol that you see, the angles in the geometry match the same slopes as the pyramid. The pyramids were the construction of Osiris that we see in the pyramid texts. And what we read by here, by E.A. Wallace Budge, which is the renowned E.A. Wallace Budge, who deciphered most of the ancient hieroglyphs, says that Asari and Asar, which is actually Osiris, that his symbol is a seat or a resting place or a tent, with inside it we have an eye. This is the eye of Osiris. So Osiris represents the same thing as we see is Jehovah, which is the same thing as the Eye of Providence. And so this is the area that it's referring to. Now, so this is important because now we've got our symbolism. This is the area that we're going to be talking about. One more piece of symbolism that backs this up is we see that the same planets again that we have right here, ending in Saturn, and then after that we have this huge cloud. You see the triangle with the Yod inside of it, right? That's the same as what we see when we take a look at Yahweh. this right letter right here represents the same thing as what we see right here. This also has to do with Pythagoras and the Tetractys, if you guys are familiar with that symbolism. So this area, the Orion Nebula Trapezium, represents what we see in history. Okay, so this triangle is really important. Also, what we see inside the triangle, just like we saw on Osiris, was the eye inside the triangle. So we have this cloud, and inside the cloud we have a triangle. This is exactly what we see when we take a look at the Orion Nebula. Now let me show you one more thing here. And this brings us back to our article that we just read. This represents the Orion Nebula. The eye represents this vortex, whatever it is, this twisting thing, this force, whatever we want to call it. I'm not going to go there right now, but this is definitely the Orion Nebula. This is the Eye of Osiris. This is the Eye of Providence. And this cloud that surrounds it represents the Orion Nebula. So just to give you a better visual on that. So, in case you're wondering now what the symbolism they're referring to here is, in all cases we see clouds surrounding a triangle. Orion Nebula right here. We can see that the shape of the outside of this nebula is the same as what we see up here in this thing too. This represents right here the eye that sits inside of this trapezium. The same place that this is how I discovered that I thought there was a vortex there, and then NASA comes out a year later. They call it a black hole. It's still up for whatever we want to call it, but I was right that there is some kind of a force or a vortex, and it's represented by an eye. This represents Jehovah right here. Okay, but here's the important thing, because we saw that the sun is powered from an outside source in the electric sun theory. Well, in this 500-year-old alchemical arc that we see right here, we can see clearly that the outside source that is powering the sun is the Orion Nebula. Okay, it is Jehovah that is powering the sun. It's using the sun, according to this 500-year-old alchemical arc, as a reflector. And as you can see right here, it's shining a light to the sun. It reflects off the sun. You see this person's holding a lens, and then it comes all the way down, and we can see that it's burning something on the ground. Notice where this guy is pointing his telescope. He's not looking at the sun. He is looking at the Orion Nebula right here. So, with that being said, and we can see that the symbolism is the same, now let's take a look at where the Bible actually backs the electric universe theory up. See, this is why these ancient texts are so important. You can get valuable information out of them as a scientist. You can extract valuable information, not necessarily as proof of anything. The proof is left for you to prove scientifically, but it definitely helps steer you in the right direction. I've gotten so much truth out of doing all this stuff. So here we go. Here's the Bible talking about Jehovah in Job 9:7. He speaks to the sun, and it does not shine. He seals off the light of the stars. So this Jehovah area, this Orion Nebula Trapezium, speaks to the sun, and it does not shine. That means he powers it. He charges the sun. And when I say he, as a scientist, you can call it whatever you want. I'm personifying it. It doesn't really matter to me either way. So we have this Orion Nebula Trapezium, according to the alchemical art, and according to the Bible, that is the area that is responsible for the charge of the sun. It also meets the electric sun theory regarding the Birkeland currents. We can see that the Orion Nebula, if that is how you want to define it, is one large Birkeland current. There is an image that I have that shows that. And so this is what it looks like right here. You can see these twisting things that you have going on right here as they come all the way up and then to the Orion Nebula Trapezium right here in the center of this cloud, which is the M42. So once again, according to this electric universe theory or electric sun theory, the sun may be powered not from within itself but from outside by the electric Birkeland currents that flow in our arm of the galaxy as they do in all galaxies. This possibility that the sun may be externally powered by its galactic environment is the most speculative idea in the electric sun hypothesis and is always attacked by critics while they completely ignore all the other more obvious properties of the electric sun model. Now what this does not do is it does not tell us what's specifically responsible for it. But we can take a look at the symbolism regarding Jehovah, regarding Osiris, which represent the same areas, the same as the Eye of Providence, the eye with the triangle. That represents the Orion Nebula. We have the triangle with the cloud around it. And this is, in the alchemical art, shooting a ray to the sun, which bounces off the sun and gives light to the earth. So the light is reflecting off the sun. This is also what's mentioned in Isis Unveiled, which I would pull up right now, but I'm not going to bother with it. But in there they go into the electric universe theory, and they say that the stars are basically reflectors, and they reflect the light of the higher light, which in our case is the Orion Nebula Trapezium. So there you go. We have alchemical art and we have the Bible, folks, backing up the electric universe theory. The sun that we have in our solar system is charged by the Orion Nebula Trapezium. Y'all take care. Hey everybody. This is a continuation from the electric universe theory discovery that I'm working on right now regarding that the sun is being powered from an external source. That external source being the Orion Nebula Trapezium. And this is based on old alchemical art. We find it's about 500 years old from Athanasius Kircher that you can see there on the upper right. You see that triangle inside the cloud there. That triangle inside the cloud is actually the Orion Nebula Trapezium. And we went through that last time, but right here, just to show you real quick, there was a previous drawing Kircher showed right here where Yahweh was in this huge cloud outside of the solar system. And we see that we have these planets going from the Earth to the Moon to Venus, Mercury, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and we have the fixed stars, and then we have Yahweh here in the middle of these clouds. So we went over to Karlskirch and we found the same, this is this discovery I made a long time ago, showing that Jehovah, the same thing that we see right here, is surrounded by clouds, just like we see right here. But this time we have a triangle, and the clouds that are surrounding it, and the bow shock, it turns out to be the Orion Nebula. So the triangle itself is the trapezium inside the Orion Nebula. So with that, we have this art right here from Athanasius Kircher that shows that this area, which is also Osiris, because Osiris' symbol was an eye inside of a triangle, and it turns out to be the eye of Osiris, and Osiris is related to Orion. But we have some additional information that we want to point to this. So this turns out to be the Jehovah, which is what we see in the Bible as capital letters L-O-R-D, and it also is the Tetragrammaton. The reason why it's important to have gathered all that symbolism is because now we can read the descriptions when we read about Jehovah and stuff like that in the Bible. It's all going to start falling together. Let's take a look at some of the characteristics that we discovered. One of the things I showed you last time was he speaks to the sun and does not shine. He seals off the light of the stars. And that shows that this area in the Orion Nebula is actually controlling the power source to the sun. Lord in capital letters in the Bible means Jehovah. Now, interestingly, they always talk about a whirlwind or a pillar, which I think is really interesting, but we won't go into that this time. Here's another interesting characteristic. He made all the stars, the Bear and Orion, the Pleiades, and the constellations of the southern sky. Well, the Orion Nebula makes stars. It's more than likely the candidate for the Orion constellation, regardless of what NASA says that the Orion Nebula is only 2 million years old, because I don't buy it if all of the other stars are, they say, are older than that, because it shows easily that the Orion Nebula was what created those stars. We also have the Pleiades. which is really close to it as well. All of the stars would be within the range of the Orion Nebula that would make sense. And so we have this area also creating stars. It's the closest star nebula to us that creates stars. So this is just another confirmation that what we're seeing right here. He speaks to the sun, does not shine, so he's controlling the power, and he also made the stars, which is the Orion Nebula as well. We also see another area in the Bible where it says, "Seek him who made the Pleiades and the Orion and the constellations of the southern sky," or what have you. And so we can see that this area is referring to that. Now here's another one I found from Ezekiel. "And when I put thee out, I will cover the heaven and make the stars thereof dark. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon shall not give her light." So this is more indication that it's controlling the power of the stars and the sun. So let's listen to this real quick, and then I'm going to show you some new stuff. I want to show you some symbolism that I found that ties all into this, and I don't know how these people knew this symbolism so long ago, but it's very clear once we know what we're dealing with that this was the case.
Evidence suggests that the corona is not rotating the same way as the photosphere, or in the same way. It rotates in the same direction, but not in the same manner. This graph from Giordano 2008 shows the measurements of the rotation period plotted against latitude, and the parabolic curve shows the differential rotation of the photosphere for comparison. And the puzzling aspect is that the corona does not show differential rotation. Also, the corona has a faster rotation, that is a smaller period, than the photosphere at higher latitudes. So that says to me that the photosphere can't be driving the corona. It seems that it's the corona that's linked to the Alphane's Faraday motor. But Alphane's mechanism can work both ways, and therefore it's possible that the corona can be driven by the heliospheric current sheet. But if so, where could the heliospheric current sheet motion come from? The recent evidence from the IBEX mission suggests that the heliosphere sits in the centre of a galactic Birkeland current. And it seems reasonable to assume that the presence of the heliosphere affects the Birkeland current, which either bulges around it, as NASA says, shown on the left, or perhaps pinches down onto it, as we might prefer. Now we know that a Birkeland current has a radially varying helicity, which allows each particle to follow the magnetic field line at its own location. The balance is maintained automatically because if I is not parallel to B at any location, the cross product will generate a radial force which moves the plasma back into alignment.
Okay, so the purpose of that really was to show you that apparently our heliosphere is sitting in the center of a galactic Birkeland current. And so this is another indication that, yeah, our sun is being powered from an external source. So this is when I started digging into some of the esoteric information and the symbolism surrounding all of it. And here's what I found out that's really interesting. I think I know now why these ancients always were associating everything to man himself. Because there is an interesting symbolism that exists in the cosmos surrounding what you're seeing right here with the Birkeland current, to what you see in the solar system, and what you see actually in the cosmos itself, that somehow relates it to man. And these ancients knew about it a long time ago. This central sun, which is what the Kabbalists and what the Jews called Jehovah, it is not our sun. The central sun, which is also, you probably have heard called the black sun before, but the black sun is really not a good word for it, because people associate that with something that's bad or whatever. But the central sun is actually the sun, the central invisible sun, which is interesting, which is what they call it. And for you guys that study the electric universe theory, I'd be very interested in knowing what phenomena out there would be considered invisible, because they always refer to it as the invisible central sun. So for whatever reason, this particular sun is invisible. This is what all of the esoteric stuff is telling us. Now I have some interesting text that I pulled out of some of this esoteric stuff I want to read for you real quick, and then I want to show you some symbolism around some of this ancient stuff, and we're going to relate it to Fohat. And if you remember, Fohat is the universal electric entity that's being referred to esoterically. It's what's actually the force, or this electricity that actually powers the sun. And we're going to see how all this ties to man here in just a little bit. But right here it says, outside the boundaries of the solar system, it is other suns, and especially the mysterious central sun, the abode of the invisible deity. So there's that word invisible. So if there's any of you guys out there that know why it would be invisible, I see this all over the place. So it's across culture, and all of these ancients, they called it invisible. And this area that they're referring to is they're referring to the center of the trapezium. And that eye that sits in the center of the trapezium, that eye is some kind of a vortex. And that vortex that they're referring to is associated with this invisible central sun. So that's some clues for you to go and look up what that might be. So the Kabbalists, they speak of their central sun right here. And interestingly, it says that the channels through which the influence of these bodies was conveyed to the earth was held to be electrical. So the Kabbalists believed that this stuff was electrical as well. Now this is interesting here. And this is from Isis Unveiled. As we will show in subsequent chapters, the sun was not considered by the ancients the direct cause of the light. So there we go again. But as an agent of the former, through which the light passes on its way to our sphere. So the light, once again, so this electricity is coming from the central sun, the Orion Nebula, and our sun is not the source of it. It is. And the Egyptians called it the Eye of Osiris, which I've already shown you the symbolism for already, which is the eye inside the triangle, and that refers to the trapezium of the Orion Nebula. And it says, the light made manifest to the world, which is the mind and divine intellect of the concealed. There's that concealed again. So it's referring to it as being some kind of an invisible phenomena. And then finally here at the bottom we see that for the Jewish and the Kabbalists here, IAO is a sun god, and the Jewish Jehovah, the intellectual or central sun. So there's our connection directly right there. So we can see that the Orion Nebula trapezium is, that since we've already determined that, and we've already looked at that and matched up the symbolism, it is the invisible central sun, and it represents the Godhead, which is also in this as well. You'll see why the Godhead makes sense too when we take a look at this related to man. So now I want to get into the symbolism regarding all of this stuff, and I want to show you something interesting about Fohat. Remember, Fohat is the electric entity, the universal electric entity. Okay, so this is where we start getting into the symbolism. So if you see up here, it says Fohat, the cosmic electricity right here. And as I scrolled down this and I began to read this stuff, I noticed that there was a very important thing I saw regarding Fohat, and it was this right here. Although Tibetan term Fohat is used by the masters and H. P. Blavatsky, nevertheless, Fohat is nothing other than Kundalini. Helena Blavatsky says of Fohat that the ancients represented it by a serpent, for Fohat hisses as he glides hither and thither. And by what illustrative symbol has Kundalini always been represented? A serpent. Well, this is really interesting because now I want to show you some more alchemical art from Athanasius Kircher that kind of proves this. And this begins to take a look at the way they were comparing man himself to the cosmos. Now, if you take a look at this particular diagram right here, this looks a lot like what we call the tree of life. And right down here you have the root. The root was always associated to earth. This represents, as we know now, it represents the central sun, the central invisible sun. And as you can see, this represents the head. And in the center of this, we would have our sun. Okay, so this is kind of like the tree of life that we would see. And so now he has another piece of art. And I want you to take a look, because we now have our Kundalini right here. But now we have planets associated to him right here. And down there we have the Earth and we have the Moon. So we have Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. We have the fixed stars, and then guess what up here? We have the central invisible sun, and that's what we see right here. So when we take a look at the Kabbalistic tree of life, we see the same basic thing as well. Let me show you a picture of that. If you remember, I did this a long time ago. Well, not that long ago, but it's showing the same thing. This right up here is derived, this pyramid that you see up here, this represents universal mind, and it represents the area of the brain. This right here represents the sun, so we have the same thing. We have the Earth, Moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, which probably could be here or here, I guess. We have this trinity here, and we have the fixed stars, and then we have the central sun. Now I want you to notice that the central sun has a direct path to the sun and then down to Earth, so we kind of see the same thing going on, where this talks to the sun talks to the Earth, and it actually reflects off the moon too, which is what we also see in the alchemical art. Now if we put the human body on top of this, we'll see what we're talking about here. Now the symbolism for this pyramid that we see right here, this was derived from St. Joseph Cathedral. You can see the air shafts inside the pyramid, and the slopes match the angles of the pyramid. And so this is where the head goes right here. You take a look at the tree of life now, you see where the sun, our sun, is located. Our sun is located with the heart, in the heart area. And this central invisible sun is located in the brain area. Okay, so that's really important to remember, because now I'm going to read to you some stuff that I found in some esoteric stuff. And this is all going to come together when I show you the symbolism cosmically. Now I've shown this stuff before, but I didn't find this text until just recently. It says the sun is the heart of the solar world system, and its brain is hidden behind the visible sun. From thence sensation is radiated into every nerve of the great body, and the waves of life essence flow into each artery and vein. The planets are the limbs and its pulses. So I found the same thing here. Occult philosophy defines the visible sun simply as a glowing sphere, the real sun being hidden behind, and that's referring to the one that refers to the brain. The invisible sun is the storehouse of our little cosmos, self-generating its vital fluid, and ever receiving as much as it gives out. From thence sensation is radiated into every nerve center of the great body, and the waves of the life essence flow into each artery and vein. The planets are its limbs and pulses. There is a regular circulation of the vital fluid throughout our system, of which the sun is the heart. So the sun, our heart, the heart of our solar system, gets powered by the invisible central sun, which is the brain. The same as the circulation of the blood. So this is really interesting. So let me show you why this is very interesting. This is why it's really interesting. Because this is Michelangelo's creation of Adam. And this is the image of a brain. And we know this because we can take a look at this thing and see that God's arm that comes across is the corpus callosum. This fold that you see right on top of his, this thinner looking fold that you see on top of his clothes right here, that is the fornix. And this fold that you see right here, this is the midbrain. But this is the brain, what you see right here. And so what he actually painted was, he actually painted the Orion Nebula, and it's an overlay, and it's in very high detail, as you can see right here. Now we know this is a brain because then we take this and we can see how the cosmos is showing us. It's showing us the symbolism of man. And so the Orion Nebula that we see right here is actually the image of a brain, which is I found out. Now remember, I discovered this a long time ago, and now it's turning out that this is the way these things are. The triangle, which you see as the trapezium of the Orion Nebula, when we look at it as a brain, interestingly, it turns out to be the area where the pineal gland is located inside the brain. And this area is, if we take a look at the Orion Nebula, the Birkeland currents, and our sun, or our sun's heliosphere, sits in the center of a galactic Birkeland current, which is coming from the Orion Nebula trapezium, which is a brain, which is the invisible central sun that is powering our sun. This is what the esoteric stuff is telling us. So I've got a couple of interesting diagrams that I created, because remember, Fohat is the same as Kundalini. So I happened to go out there and find a diagram of Kundalini, and let me show you something really interesting. This is the diagram that I found regarding Kundalini on the internet, and you can see the flow of the Kundalini as it goes up the spine. Does it look familiar to you? Does it look like anything that you're familiar with in the electric universe theory? Well, I've got a diagram to show you here. And here is your Birkeland current right here. And I want you to notice the similarities between what we see right here and what we see right here. I don't think it's a coincidence that this Kundalini follows the same path as what we see with a Birkeland current right here. And as it gets up into the head, it passes right through the area of the pineal gland and then moves up through the top of the head. The same twisting motion is happening here. It moves up through the brain, and this line that you see right here, this line passes right through that area which is associated with the pineal gland, which is the brain, which is the brain in the Orion Nebula. This is the pineal gland area, and that's exactly where that's passing through, just like we see in Kundalini, matching the current. So you can see how these ancients knew this. I have no idea. And then here's a copy of what we see right here. Now, there's another piece of symbolism I've shown you before as well, and it's regarding the winged disc. And if you're familiar with the staff of Hermes, which is what we see right here, a lot of times what you see in this is you will see the chakras. You see how this person is right here on this particular diagram that you see right here, and the wings on his head. Well, this is exactly what we see in the Assyrian, or the where they show the tree of life and the winged disc sitting on top of it. And we see Hermes, he's got the wings on his head right here holding a staff. Okay, so we have the same kind of information right here. This is the tree of life that you see right here. You see the pine cones? They're holding up to this. You see Hermes and you see the tree of life. The tree of life that they're showing you on this diagram back here, and you see where the staff is? That staff that he's holding right there is located right where our sun is, and that's the heart of the solar system. We come up to the very top, and then we have the winged disc, which is in the head, which is in the brain area. And all of this has been looked at as far as geometry before. This is the infrared version of the Orion Nebula, and there's your winged disc that I found a long time ago. And the geometry matches what we see on top of this tree of life. And the pine cones represent the pineal gland. Now, the line that you see pointing from this winged disc to this area right here, this is the image that we see. So we actually see Kundalini coming up and ending in a winged disc right here, which is what we see, and it's what we see in these diagrams. So cosmically, what we're seeing is we're actually seeing the Earth, which is root, and then we have our sun here. Once we leave the solar system right here, this area up here represents the brain, which is spoken of, and which is the, if this is Earth and this is our visible sun, remember it is the central invisible sun behind our sun. So if this is Earth, behind our sun is the central invisible sun, which represents the brain. All of this all matches up. The symbolism matches up. Amazingly, all of the symbolism that we even see cosmically matches up to what we see in these diagrams, matches up to what we see or what we read in these texts. It all matches up. So I'm almost 100% sure that this area is what is powering the sun, as described in the text that we just read. So if we take a look at this again, the true sun is at the heart of the solar system, and its brain is hidden behind the visible sun. Occult philosophy defines the visible sun as simply a glowing sphere. The real sun, being hidden behind the invisible sun, is the storehouse of our little cosmos, self-generating its vital fluid and ever receiving as much of it gives out. From thence sensation is radiated into every nerve center of the great body. The great body, so it basically powers the solar system, or it powers the sun, and our sun powers the body. Very, very interesting. And also extremely similar, a similar structure that we would see when we take a look at man. And the whole idea of Fohat being the cosmic electricity and being related to Birkeland currents, and Birkeland currents looking like Kundalini and all this other stuff that we see. I thought you guys might be interested in seeing that. So we have this information from that we can actually see, and we know that Michelangelo, as I showed you, we can look at the details, but this creation of Adam, he painted the Orion Nebula, and the Orion Nebula is a brain, and now we know why. It's the brain that powers our sun, which is the body of the solar system, which is the heart. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed that. Y'all take care. Talk to you soon.